Good morning, everybody. Mrs. Norris here. Today we're going to be talking about the Protestant Reformation. So the Protestant Reformation was a time in England during the 16th century when there was a lot of division within the Catholic Church. So different leaders emerged to break the church apart into different sects. So we're going to discuss that today. And the reason why we're discussing this is because a lot of these Reformation figures, like Martin Luther, their ideas came to America under the ideas of freedom of thought, democracy, and a limited government. So these ideas that were brought about during the Reformation period affect us today in the way that our government is structured and the way we think about how leaders should rule. Okay, so this activity is a fairly easy activity for you this week. You have some various readings about the Protestant Reformation, what led to it, the key people involved in the Reformation, and the way in which it spread. So what you're going to do is you're going to read each section, and you can see for each section here we have these drag tools. And we've used these tools before, but just a reminder, very simply, you're going to click on a drag tool and drag it over to your reading. And it tells you for the purple, you're going to use the squares to highlight important information. For the green, you're going to use the squares to highlight key names and terms. And then the star, you're going to put next to one of the pieces of information that you find to be the most important and really gives the main idea of the whole reading itself. So very simply, you click and drag. And I haven't read that sentence, so I don't know what I'm highlighting. I'm just showing you how to use this tool. So you click and drag it to highlight the sentence that you think is important. So important information, you're going to use the purple, right? Move this back over. The green you're going to use to highlight key names and ideas. And you can see that a lot of these are already bold. So it's the easiest thing would probably be to start with the green and highlight your bold words and phrases that are in your reading. Okay. And then when you're done, let's say, for example, I feel like this is an important sentence. I'm just going to pick one. Okay. It doesn't mean that it's important. I'm just using it for example. Okay, so let's say I've picked this one. And if you run out of squares, you can always take whatever your last one is, and you can copy and paste it to make more of your own squares. Okay, so let's say I think that that's an important sentence. I haven't even really read it. I'm just using this for example. Now that I've got my paper filled with these purple squares of information that I think is important, I'm going to go back over them, and the one that I think is the most important, I'm going to put this star next to. So let's just say I think that this one is the most important. It is definitely not. It's just a random sentence that I picked, but in this case, I'm using it for example. So if I think this sentence in particular is the most important of all of them and really tells me what the whole reading is about, I'm going to put a star next to it, okay, just by clicking and dragging the star over. And there's only one because you're only choosing one sentence, okay? I'm going to move that back there. So once I've got my paper filled up with my drag tools and everything, and I've highlighted the important information, I put a star next to the one that was most important, and I've got green for my phrases and my people, I'm going to take this information to fill out the next slide. So that slide was about Erasmus and Tyndale. The next page, Erasmus and Tyndale. So the sentence that I've put the star next to that should be the main idea, I'm just going to type it here. Okay, so this would be my main idea for the whole reading, and then I'm going to go back and choose 3 other sentences that support that main idea. That's why this portion of the activity is important, because it helps you to focus your reading, find the information that's most important, and then you don't have to go back and reread it again because you've already completed that task in the first place. Okay, so by the time you are done, you should definitely have no more purple squares and your stars should be gone. You might have a few more green, you might need to make more, but again, this should be gone because you've got all of your important information highlighted and your star has shown which one is the most important. So you're going to use that information to fill out the top piece. The starred sentence will be here, and then 3 sentences that you've highlighted to support it will go here. And then you're going to find a picture that's related to the topic. So I'm going to click and delete, and then find a picture and resize it so it fits in this box here. And then for the last piece, you're going to do a short little summary of what you read here. Okay, so just typing what you learned very quickly in your own words, you'll type that down here. Okay, so again, the first step is to highlight the information the way that the drag tools tell you to, and then use that to complete the next page. Okay, so that's the first thing that you're going to do. You're going to read, highlight, and then translate it into a main idea and supporting details. Now, after a couple of these slides, there are a set of questions. And the questions, you can tell which one it goes with because in bold up here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. When you zoom, use your zoom drop down. Don't use Control plus or Command plus, because oftentimes what will happen is you do it too much and then your slide gets smaller, your text gets smaller, and it just doesn't help you in the situation to see what you're trying to read. So the best thing to do is use your zoom tool. So I'm going to click on my drop down menu next to the magnifying glass, and I'm going to go up to 100 just so I can read it. And it says the Catholic Church before the Reform, power, influence, and corruption. So these 2 questions here go with this reading up at the top, power, influence, and corruption. Okay, my next 2 questions, early reformers, Erasmus and Tyndale. Well, that's going to go with this reading here, or not that one, this one, Erasmus and Tyndale. So again, pay attention to what is in bold, because what is in bold is going to tell you where to find the reading that you're going to need for answering the questions. Okay. Now you'll also notice that a couple of these slides, and I'm going to go back to fit. A couple of these slides have these big boxes that say, do not move this box. All these big boxes are doing is hiding other questions behind it. Okay, so I suggest that you don't move them so that you don't think that you have to answer those questions. If you did move it and then forgot that you moved it and went back, you'll see you don't have a reading on the 95 theses. So you won't have the information to answer the question. So the best thing for you to do is where it says do not move this box, just leave that box alone. That way you can focus on just the questions that you're supposed to answer and not get overwhelmed by the ones that you are not. Okay, so again, what we're learning about today is the Protestant Reformation. The reason why this is important for us to understand is because a lot of these ideas that were brought about during the Reformation are ideas that were used again later when they were establishing the American government. So this is an important time period of world history for us to understand. And to understand it, you are going to be reading, finding key information, and then using that to find a main idea and supporting sentences, and to answer some questions that are related to your reading.